When someone tries to diminish your joy, question your enthusiasm, or transform your confidence into something negative, it's not about you. It's about the mirror you represent to the parts of them that are still dormant. When you notice these signs, don't retreat. Don't lower your frequency. On the contrary, expand even more, because it is precisely at that moment that your presence is catalyzing a transformation. There's a fascinating phenomenon that happens when you maintain your authenticity even under the envious gaze. And learn to recognize the signs. When someone tries to diminish your joy, question your enthusiasm, or transform your confidence into something negative, it's not about you. It's about the mirror you represent to the parts of them that are still dormant. When you notice these signs, don't retreat. Don't lower your frequency. On the contrary, expand even more, because it is precisely at that moment that your presence is catalyzing a transformation. There's a fascinating phenomenon that happens when you maintain your authenticity even under the envious gaze. Like a diamond that doesn't apologize for reflecting light, you begin to attract people who recognize and celebrate your brilliance without trying to dim it. People who see your light not as a threat, but as permission for them to shine too. It's like that constellation that only forms when each star remains in its unique position, shining at its maximum intensity. If one star tried to be smaller so as not to outshine the others, the entire constellation would lose its power, its shape, its purpose. You are one of those guiding stars, Leo. Your brilliance is not accidental. It is essential to humanity's celestial map. And those who feel envy are simply souls still learning to navigate this starry sky, not yet understanding that the brilliance of other stars does not diminish the potential of their own. Go back to that childhood when your light was already evident. Do you remember the adults saying, "She's so intense, he has so much energy, that child doesn't go unnoticed"? While others were praised for being calm and obedient, you were seen as defiant, dramatic, demanding. It was the beginning of the world's attempt to tame your wildfire. Back to that childhood when your light was already evident. Do you remember the adults saying, "She's so intense, he has so much energy, that child doesn't go unnoticed"? While others were praised for being calm and obedient, you were seen as defiant, dramatic, demanding. It was the beginning of the world's attempt to tame your wildfire, to convince you that your nature needed to be contained, controlled, diminished. But something inside you resisted. Even when you tried to fit in, even when you tried to be less, your essence found ways to manifest itself. It was impossible to keep the sun trapped in a box for long. It always found cracks to escape, to illuminate, to warm. And now, looking back, you realize that every attempt to dim your light throughout your life only strengthened your determination to shine. You were seen as defiant, dramatic, demanding. It was the beginning of the world's attempt to tame your wildfire, to convince you that your nature needed to be contained, controlled, diminished. But something inside you resisted. Even when you tried to fit in, even when you tried to be less, your essence found ways to manifest itself. It was impossible to keep the sun trapped in a box for long. It always found cracks to escape, to illuminate, to warm. And now, looking back, you realize that every attempt to dim your light throughout your life only strengthened your determination to shine. Every derogatory comment, every disapproving glance, every friendship lost because you were too much. All those moments were crucial to your journey of self-discovery and self-affirmation. It was through these challenges that you learned the difference between shining to feed your ego and shining to fulfill your purpose. You were too much. All those moments were crucial to your journey of self-discovery and self-affirmation. It was through these challenges that you learned the difference between shining to feed your ego and shining to fulfill your purpose. The first is a light that consumes, the second is a light that nourishes. And you, Leo, chose the second, even when the cost seemed too high, so as not to scare or intimidate the other person. How many times have you heard, "I love your passion, but sometimes it's exhausting"? Or, "Could you be less you sometimes?" As if your natural enthusiasm, your genuine expressiveness, your ability to live each moment to the fullest were flaws to be corrected and not gifts to be celebrated. And yet, when she found someone who truly recognized and celebrated her light, the connection was instant and transformative, because people who possess their own light don't fear the brilliance of others. They recognize it, celebrate it, and dance with it. At work, how many times have your ideas initially been met with resistance, only to be adopted weeks or months later, often without due recognition? How many times has your vision been called unrealistic or too ambitious, only to prove itself exactly what was needed? They recognize it, celebrate it, and dance with it. At work, how many times have your ideas initially been met with resistance, only to be adopted weeks or months later, often without due recognition? How many times has your vision been called unrealistic or too ambitious, only to prove itself exactly what was needed? How many times have you had to fight twice as hard to receive half the recognition? It's because your courage to dream big, to envision possibilities where others see only limitations, awakens that unsettling feeling in those who have chosen the safety of mediocrity instead of the risk of greatness. They don't just envy what you've achieved, they envy the courage you have to try, to take risks, to believe. In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it? How many times have you had to fight twice as hard to receive half the recognition? It's because your courage to dream big, to envision possibilities where others see only limitations, awakens that unsettling feeling in those. They don't just envy what you've achieved, they envy the courage you have to try, to take risks, to believe your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it. Awakens that unsettling feeling in those who have chosen the safety of mediocrity instead of the risk of greatness. They don't just envy what you've achieved, they envy the courage you have to try. In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control? They don't just envy what you've achieved, they envy the courage you have to try, to take risks, to believe. In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control, to take risks, to believe? In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it, instead of the risk of greatness, to take risks, to believe? In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it? They envy the courage you have to try, to take risks, to believe. In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it, as if they wanted to absorb your brilliance, but couldn't cope with the fact that this brilliance cannot be possessed, only to later try to control or diminish it? They don't just envy what you've achieved, they envy the courage you have to try, to take risks, to believe. In friendships, have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it, as if they wanted to absorb your brilliance, but couldn't cope with the fact that this brilliance cannot be possessed, only shared? The true friendships in your life are those where there is a genuine exchange of light, not a competition for it, where your intensity is not seen as a threat, but as a catalyst, where your capacity to love deeply, to care intensely, to live fully is celebrated. Not have you noticed how some people initially approach you fascinated by your energy, only to later try to control or diminish it, as if they wanted to absorb your brilliance, but couldn't cope with the fact that this brilliance cannot be possessed, only shared? The true friendships in your life are those where there is a genuine exchange of light, not a competition for it, where your intensity is not seen as a threat, but as a catalyst, where your capacity to love deeply, to care intensely, to live fully is celebrated, not criticized, is shared. The true friendships in your life are those where there is a genuine exchange of light, not a competition for it, where your intensity is not seen as a threat, but as a catalyst, where your capacity to love deeply, to care intensely, to live fully is celebrated, not criticized. And that's why, when you finally find your circle, those people who not only tolerate your light, but celebrate it, it feels like coming home, like finally being able to breathe fully, like being seen, truly seen, in all your magnificent and imperfect glory. There's a cosmic reason for all of this, you know, a reason why your light awakens so much envy, but also so much inspiration. It's because you, Leo, carry the archetype of the sun incarnate. You're not just another person trying to find your place in the world. You're a force of nature, reminding others of the divine nature that dwells within them. When you express your creativity fearlessly, when you lead with an open heart, when you love without reservation, when you celebrate your achievements without false modesty, you are demonstrating to the world a way of being that many have forgotten is possible. You are reclaiming an ancestral memory of a time when we all lived in our full truth, without fear, without shame, without restraint. And that's revolutionary. It's transformative. It's necessary. Now consider what happens when you enter a room and instead of trying to adapt, allow your presence to transform the environment. How the energy shifts. How people, initially uncomfortable with your authenticity, gradually begin to open up. How your permission to be fully you ends up becoming a silent permission for others to also allow themselves to be fully who they are. It's like lighting a torch in a dark cave. At first, the light seems too bright, almost painful for eyes accustomed to darkness. But as the eyes adjust, the light reveals beauties that were hidden in the shadows. It shows paths that were previously invisible. It offers the possibility of exploration, discovery, and expansion. Her presence does it. Her authenticity does it. Her refusal to dim her light does it. And that's exactly why some react with envy, because it's easier to resent the light than to do the work of lighting your own. It's easier to criticize your authenticity than to confront your own lack of it. It's easier to label your confidence as arrogance than to develop your own inner security. But here's the secret that transforms everything. The more you remain true to your Leo nature, the more you honor your intensity, your passion, your natural greatness, the more you create an energy field that allows others to do the same. Your consistency in being true to yourself becomes a silent invitation for others to be true as well. And so, envy gradually transforms into inspiration, resistance into respect, fear into fascination, without you having to do anything other than continue being exactly who you are. The more you remain true to your Leo nature, the more you honor your intensity, your passion, your natural greatness, the more you create an energy field that allows others to do the same. Your consistency in being true to yourself becomes a silent invitation for others to be true as well. And so, envy gradually transforms into inspiration, resistance into respect, fear into fascination, without you having to do anything other than continue being exactly who you are, authentic glory. This is your gift to the world, Leo. Not just your talent, your creativity, your leadership ability, but your courage to be fully yourself, without excuses, without diminishment, without compromise. In a world of copies, you are the original. In a world of whispers, you are the roar. In a world of shadows, you are the midday light. And that absolute refusal to be less than who you truly are is what awakens envy in those who haven't yet found the courage to do the same. And so, envy gradually transforms into inspiration, resistance into respect, fear into fascination, without you having to do anything other than continue being exactly who you are, in all your magnificent, imperfect, intense, and authentic glory. This is your gift to the world, Leo. Not just your talent, your creativity, your leadership ability, but your courage to be fully yourself without excuses, without diminishment, without compromise. In a world of copies, you are the original. In a world of whispers, you are the roar. In a world of shadows, you are the midday light. And that absolute refusal to be less than who you truly are is what awakens envy in those who haven't yet found the courage to do the same. But it's also what will eventually inspire them to find it. Keep shining, Leo. The world desperately needs your light.
There's a major focus, need, emphasis on mastering solitude here, okay? Because again, some of you guys are starlight beings here, okay? It's nice to have a relationship here, but it's almost as if you have to really find somebody who is like you, okay? And this message is going to be for the star seeds here, okay? I kept hearing intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. I was like, what is going on? And then I saw the actual word. I was like, okay, so let me see what this is about here, okay? So I pulled some energy here, and it's really crazy how the message came out here, okay? Number one, you may want to listen to the, oh no, I'm hearing remote. You may want to buy the Beastie Boys here, okay? Another dimension. All right, again, this message is not going to be for everyone. I'm speaking to star seeds here, okay? You're not from this planet here, okay? Okay? You're not from this planet here, okay? Some of you guys, a message I was getting off top, this is your last bid here. You are going back to your place of origin here, like mission completed, you're done, okay?
I'm here on a mission, okay? I come to get the people ready. Are you ready to go home? I hope so. Don't let the Lord catch you with your work undone. Keep on striving until the victory is won. What would it profit a man to gain this whole world and mess around and lose his own soul over some money? Ain't that a shame? Come on now, we got to use our head. We got to think better than this. We got to think better than what we've been thinking, okay? Stop letting the oppressor win. Start using your brain and think, all right? Think.
Wishing well, all right? Some of you guys, there could be a manifestation that's coming through. But what they're saying when it comes to your manifestations here, like these karmic relationships, like they cause a infestation when it comes to the field of dreams here. They're like locusts that eats up all your crops here, okay? So there's a major focus, need, emphasis on mastering solitude here, okay? Because again, some of you guys are starlight beings here, okay? It's nice to have a relationship here, but it's almost as if you have to really find somebody who is like you, okay, in order for it to work. And until then here, a lot of your mastery is going to come from solitude, you being by yourself, okay, doing things by yourself here, okay? Something about solitude and mastery here, all right? And then this was so crazy the way it came out here. Dry desert and balancing act here. They want to aid and assist you on pulling off a balancing act when it comes to your endeavors, when it comes to your needs, your wants, your desires, again, your manifestations here, your life in general here. And then what really took me for a loop is unexpected visitors landed on dry desert. Now, you know there's always UFO sightings. It always happens in the desert here, okay? I'm also getting something about Salem, Oregon could be significant here, okay? But this is the message here, all right? And some of you guys have been paying attention to the news, the cosmos here. Like, there is a lot of cosmic activity going on at this time, more than ever. Okay? Yeah. And then I also got wait, gaze, judge, reflect, then act boldly here. Okay? And this has to do with the karmic relationships here. Like, don't just jump in head first because of surface level. So there could be an influx of people, like another wave of people awakening here, because for the most part, I know a lot of you guys already know this here. Okay, you've already learned this lesson here, but your mastery comes from solitude here, this hermit energy, Virgo energy here. All right, so I'm gonna pull a new spread here. I'm not gonna make this too long, but yes, this is a message for my star seeds. Okay, message for my star seeds. Okay. Yeah, they're saying these goblins here, they stand between you and all your needs, your desires, and your wants here. Okay, so once you master not your people, okay, that energy where you can meet somebody nice, but when something pops off, I brought this up in a previous reading, when something pops off here, when there's clearly a right and a wrong, and somebody's standing in the middle, there's like, oh, I'm indifferent, well, I don't want to get involved, you're my friend and they're my friend. Like, be mindful of those. Not everybody who is karmic comes off as being rude or nasty or domineering. Some of them are these, let's keep the peace, toxic, love and light type energy here. Okay, it's toxic. You definitely came here to learn a lesson here. All right, so I'm gonna pull a new spread here. I'm not gonna make this too long, but yes, goblins here, they stand between you and all your needs, your desires, and your wants here. Okay, so once you master karmic relationships, and I feel like it has a lot to do with you recognizing patterns and habits here. Again, there's something that has a lot to do with you recognizing patterns and habits here. Again, there's something about people who have no compassion here. They're not your people. Okay, about people who have no compassion here. They're not your people. About people who have no compassion here. They're not your people.
Look, I've been watching politics for a long time, lived it, breathed it for decades, and I've seen a lot of things in my years in public service. But what Donald Trump just did to Zohran Mamdani, most people have no idea what they're actually witnessing here. See, this isn't just about one mayoral race in New York City. On the surface, you've got Trump endorsing a Democrat, Andrew Cuomo, over his own party's candidate. You've got the President of the United States thinking about the transfer of power, the peaceful transition that defines us as a nation. And now I'm watching a sitting president try to overturn the will of voters before they even cast their ballots. This isn't normal. And I need you to understand why it matters, not just for New York, not just for Zohran Mamdani, but for every single one of us who believes in American democracy. I remember the exact moment I realized American politics had entered a different era. It wasn't on election night 2016. It wasn't during any particular scandal or controversy. It was actually a quiet Tuesday afternoon in 2017, a few months after I'd left office. And I was sitting in my post-presidential office in Washington, scrolling through the news on my iPad. Yeah, I finally had time to do that without 17 people needing me for something. He's not just threatening one state anymore. He's targeting one person, Zohran Mamdani, a 3-4-year-old state assemblyman running for mayor of New York City, and he's using the full weight of the presidency to try to crush him. Let me be clear about what's happening here, because I think a lot of people are missing it. Trump didn't just endorse Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, over his own party's candidate. That's unusual, sure, but not unprecedented. What's unprecedented is that he's threatening to withhold billions in federal funding from New York City, funding for transit, for infrastructure, for programs that millions of people depend on if voters choose the wrong candidate. Think about that for a second. The President of the United States is telling American citizens, vote the way I want, or I'll punish your entire city. I know what some of you are thinking. Obama, you're being dramatic. Trump says a lot of things. He's just talking. And look, I get it. We've all become a little numb to the outrage of the day cycle. But here's what I learned in 8 years in the White House. Words from the Oval Office have weight. they have consequences. And threats from a president aren't just talk, they're a promise of government action. When I was president, I dealt with governors and mayors. I disagreed with all the time. I had Republican governors who opposed everything I stood for. Some of them sued my administration repeatedly. Chris Christie, Scott Walker, Rick Perry, we were on opposite sides of just about every issue you can name. But here's what I never did. I never threatened to withhold their federal funding because I didn't like their politics. I never called them communists or suggested they should be arrested. I never told their constituents, don't vote for this person, or I'll make sure your city suffers. Because that's not how democracy works. You see, what Trump is doing to Mamdani isn't just about one race. It's about establishing a precedent, a new normal, where the president can use federal resources as a weapon to shape local elections, to punish political opponents, to override the will of voters. Mamdani won the Democratic primary fair and square. He beat Andrew Cuomo, a former two-term governor, by double digits. And now Trump is essentially saying, I don't care what Democratic voters chose. I don't care what the polls say. If you elect this person, I will make your lives harder. I've been studying this young man, Mamdani. Born in Uganda, came to America, became a citizen in 2018, worked his way up to the state assembly, representing Queens. He's running on issues like affordable housing, free childcare, rent freezes, policies you can agree or disagree with. That's democracy. But he's not a communist, despite what Trump keeps saying. He's a democratic socialist, which, whether you like it or not, is a legitimate political philosophy with a long history in American politics. But Trump isn't interested in debating policy. He's interested in power, specifically the power to decide who gets to hold office in America, regardless of what voters want. And here's the part that really keeps me up at night. Trump went on 60 Minutes and said, it's going to be hard for me as president to give a lot of money to New York. If you have a communist running New York, all you're doing is wasting the money you're sending there. Hard for him to give money to New York? That's not how federal funding works. That money doesn't belong to Donald Trump. It belongs to the American people. It's allocated by Congress through a legal process. A president doesn't get to say, I don't like how you voted, so you don't get your highway funds, your disaster relief, your transit funding. Or at least, that's not how it's supposed to work. But what worries me, what really worries me, is that Trump is testing something here. He's testing whether he can get away with it. He's testing whether the American people will just shrug and accept this as the new normal. Because if he can do this to New York City, he can do it to anywhere. He can do it to your city, your state, your community, all because you voted for someone he doesn't like. This is how democracies die. Not with a bang, but with a series of small surrenders moments where we collectively decide that fighting back is too exhausting, that outrage is too tiring, that maybe it's easier to just let it slide. I refuse to let it slide. Let me take you back to 2009, my first year in office. I was dealing with the aftermath of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. The auto industry was collapsing, unemployment was skyrocketing, and I had to make some tough calls about who got federal assistance and who didn't. I remember sitting in the Oval Office with Rahm Emanuel, my chief of staff, and he said something I've never forgotten. Mr. President, you're going to have more power in your hands right now than maybe any president in modern history. Companies, cities, entire industries, they need us to survive. How you use that power will define your presidency. And I knew exactly what he meant. When people are desperate, when they need help, that's when a president has the most leverage. That's when it would be easiest to say, I'll help you, but only if you do what I want politically. I made a decision right then. I would never use federal assistance as a political weapon. Not ever. So when the auto bailout happened, I didn't call up the governors of Michigan or Ohio and say, hey, I'm saving your auto industry, but I need you to support my healthcare bill. I didn't tell Republican governors, you'll get your disaster relief, but first you need to stop criticizing me on TV, because that would have been an abuse of power, period. Now, I'm watching Trump do exactly what I refused to do, and he's doing it openly, proudly, as if it's just smart politics. But here's what people need to understand. This isn't new for Trump. This is his playbook. I've been watching him use it for years now, and what he's doing to Mamdani is just the latest chapter in a very old story. Let me walk you through the pattern, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Step 1, label your opponent as an existential threat. Trump doesn't just disagree with Mamdani's policies. He calls him a communist. He says New York will face complete and total economic and social disaster if Mamdani wins. He claims the city has zero chance of success or even survival under Mamdani's leadership. This is intentional. When you make someone out to be not just wrong, but dangerous, a threat to the very existence of the city, you're setting the stage for extreme measures. You're telling people this isn't normal politics, this is an emergency, and emergencies require emergency actions. I saw this playbook used in other countries when I was president. Hugo Chavez in Venezuela used to do this. Recep Erdogan in Turkey perfected it. Viktor Orban in Hungary still does it today. You take your political opponents and you don't just criticize them, you dehumanize them. You make them into monsters. And once someone's a monster, well, anything you do to stop them seems justified. Step 2, threaten the resources people depend on. Trump isn't just criticizing Mamdani. He's threatening to withhold federal funding from New York City money for subways, for roads, for schools, for everything that keeps a city of 8 million people functioning. And he's being very specific about it. He said he'd give them the very minimum as required. He said on 60 Minutes, it would be hard for him to send money to a city run by Mamdani. He's telling New Yorkers, your choice is simple, vote for who I want, or watch your city crumble. This is economic coercion at a scale I've never seen from an American president. When I was in office, we had what we called the intergovernmental relations process. Sounds boring, right? But it was actually sacred. It was the way federal, state, and local governments work together, regardless of party. A Republican governor could hate my guts politically, but when Hurricane Sandy hit, when tornadoes tore through their states, when they needed help, they got it. No questions asked, no political loyalty tests, because that's what the federal government is supposed to do. We're supposed to be there for all Americans, not just the ones who vote the way we like. Trump is dismantling that entire framework, and he's doing it in the open, daring anyone to stop him. Step 3, bypass your own party when they won't do what you want. Here's the part that should terrify Republicans, even if they think they're safe because they're on Trump's side right now. Trump endorsed a Democrat, Andrew Cuomo, over the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa. Let that sink in. The Republican president told his own party's voters to abandon their candidate and vote for a Democrat instead. Now, Trump's justification is that Sliwa can't win, and a vote for Sliwa is effectively a vote for Mamdani. Fine, that's political calculus. But it reveals something deeper. Trump doesn't care about party. He doesn't care about ideology. He cares about personal loyalty. Cuomo will work with Trump. Cuomo will take Trump's calls. Cuomo will be, as Mamdani put it, Trump's puppet. And that's all that matters. I dealt with politicians I couldn't stand when I was president. Mitch McConnell and I didn't exactly have warm feelings for each other. But you know what? I never tried to get his voters to replace him with someone more convenient for me, because that's not how our system works. Every member of Congress, every governor, every mayor, they answer to their constituents, not to the president. That's by design. The founders understood that concentrating too much power in one person's hands was dangerous. But Trump is trying to make everyone answer to him. And he's using threats, intimidation, and federal resources to do it. Step 4, make it personal. Trump hasn't just gone after Mamdani's policies. He's gone after Mamdani himself personally, relentlessly, cruelly. Back in July, Trump said he'd have Mamdani arrested if he interfered with ICE raids. He's called him a communist repeatedly, even though Mamdani is a democratic socialist. There's a difference, and Trump knows it. He suggested Mamdani was here illegally, even though Mamdani is a naturalized U.S. citizen who served in the New York State Assembly for 5 years. And just recently, Elon Musk, Trump's ally, posted on social media calling Mamdani Mamdumi, or whatever his name is. This is deliberate disrespect. It's meant to diminish, to otherize, to send a message, this person isn't really one of us. I know what that feels like. For 8 years, there were people who questioned whether I was really American. They questioned my birth certificate, my religion, my patriotism. Trump himself was one of the loudest voices in that birther movement. And I learned something from that experience. When someone tries to make you seem foreign, illegitimate, un-American, they're not just attacking you. They're attacking the idea that you have a right to participate in American democracy at all. That's what Trump is doing to Mamdani. He's not just saying, I disagree with this guy's policies. He's saying, this guy doesn't belong here. This guy isn't a real American. This guy is a threat that needs to be eliminated. And when you create that narrative, you make it easier to justify anything withholding funds, sending in federal troops, arresting political opponents. I've seen this playbook before. I've seen it in countries where democracy was slipping away. And every time it started the same way. A leader who believed he was above the law, who believed his power was unlimited, who believed anyone who opposed him was an enemy of the state. I never thought I'd see it happen in America, but here we are. And the question now is, what are we going to do about it? Here's something that drives me crazy about modern politics. We've become so obsessed with labels that we forget to actually look at the people behind them. Trump calls Mamdani a communist about 17 times a day. Fox News runs segments with ominous music playing over footage of Mamdani at rallies. The narrative's been set. Dangerous, radical, threat to America, everything you should be afraid of. But here's what Trump doesn't want you to know about Zohran Mamdani. And trust me, there's a reason he's working so hard to demonize this guy rather than debate him. I had my team pull together everything they could find on Mamdani. And you know what I found? A story that sounds a lot more like the American dream than the American nightmare Trump is trying to sell you. Mamdani was born in Uganda in 1991, the same year I was graduating from Harvard Law School and starting my career. His parents were Indian immigrants who'd built a life in East Africa. When Mamdani was young, his family came to the United States. He grew up in Queens, went to public schools, and eventually graduated from the University of Virginia. He became a U.S. citizen in 2018, 7 years ago. This guy waited, went through the process, took the oath, did everything by the book, and now the President of the United States is suggesting he's somehow illegitimate, somehow doesn't belong here. After college, Mamdani didn't go work on Wall Street or take some cushy corporate job. He became a community organizer, actually. That's where I perked up, because that's how I started too. He worked with tenants facing eviction in Queens, fought for affordable housing, organized working families who were being priced out of their neighborhoods. In 2020, at age 29, he ran for New York State Assembly against a 10-term incumbent and won. And for the past 5 years, he's represented Astoria and parts of Queens in Albany. Now, you might disagree with his politics. Here's what you can't deny. This is someone who participated in the system, who earned the trust of his constituents, who did the work, and he's been effective. I looked at his record in the Assembly. He's passed legislation on tenant protections, on healthcare access, on education funding. He's shown up for his district, fought for them, delivered results. His constituents kept him in office because he was doing the job. Then in June 2025, he decided to run for mayor. And here's where it gets interesting, because this is the part Trump really doesn't want you thinking about. Mamdani didn't just squeak by in the Democratic primary. He didn't win by a few hundred votes in some low turnout election. He beat Andrew Cuomo, a guy who was governor of New York for a decade, a guy with name recognition, money, the whole establishment behind him by double digits. Let me repeat that. A 3-4-year-old state assemblyman running on a progressive platform of affordable housing and workers' rights defeated one of the most powerful politicians in New York State by 14 points. That's not a fluke. That's not a mistake. That's what happens when voters actually connect with someone, when they believe that person understands their struggles and will fight for them. And you know what Mamdani's campaign was about? It wasn't about identity politics or culture wars or the usual stuff that dominates our political discourse. It was about rent. It was about childcare costs. It was about people working 2 jobs and still not being able to afford to live in the city where they were born. Sound familiar? It should, because that's what I was hearing in 2008 when I was running for president. That's what people were telling me in town halls across Iowa, in VFW halls in Ohio, in diners in Pennsylvania. They were working harder than ever and getting less in return. They felt like the system was rigged against them. Trump won in 2024 partly because he tapped into that same frustration. He told people he understood their economic anxiety, that he'd fight for the forgotten workers, that he'd take on the elites. And now here comes Mamdani running on that exact message, but from the left instead of the right. He's talking about making housing affordable, making healthcare accessible, making childcare free so parents can actually work without spending their entire paycheck on daycare. You can disagree with his solutions. You can think his policies won't work or will cost too much or whatever, but you can't deny he's talking about real problems that real people face every single day. And Trump's response? He's not debating those policies. He's not offering better solutions. He's just calling Mamdani a communist and threatening to bankrupt New York City if voters choose him. That should tell you something. Here's what I think is really going on, and this is the part Trump definitely doesn't want you to figure out. Mamdani represents something Trump can't control: organic grassroots political power. This wasn't some billionaire who bought his way into politics. This wasn't someone who had the establishment, the donors, the machine behind him. This was a young organizer who built a movement from the ground up, who knocked on doors, who earned the trust of working people one conversation at a time. That's threatening to Trump, because Trump's whole model is based on top-down power, using money, using media, using the bully pulpit of the presidency to force people to bend to his will. Mamdani represents bottom-up power, the kind that can't be bought, can't be intimidated, can't be controlled. I saw this dynamic when I was running for president in 2008. The establishment didn't think I could win. Hillary Clinton had the endorsements, the money, the infrastructure. But we built something different, a grassroots movement of people who wanted change, who were tired of the same old politics. And we won, not because we had more money or more powerful friends. We won because we had more people who believed in what we were fighting for. That's what's happening with Mamdani right now in New York. And it terrifies Trump, because if Mamdani wins, if a 3-4-year-old Democratic socialist organizer can become mayor of America's largest city, despite the president of the United States trying to stop him, it sends a message to every other city, every other state, every other community in America. You don't have to be afraid. You can stand up, you can organize, you can win. And once people realize that, Trump's whole game falls apart. See, Trump's power is built on fear. Fear that if you oppose him, he'll destroy you. Fear that if you don't fall in line, you'll lose everything. Fear that resistance is futile. But Mamdani isn't backing down. Even with Trump threatening to arrest him, threatening to starve New York of federal funds, threatening to send in troops, Mamdani keeps campaigning. He keeps talking about the issues. He keeps building his movement. At a rally in Astoria on the eve of the election, surrounded by thousands of supporters wearing yellow beanies, that's his campaign color, Mamdani said something that stuck with me. He said, leave everything out there on the field. These are the hands that have brought us to this point of making history in this city. The hands, not the money, not the endorsements from billionaires or presidents, the hands of ordinary people working together. That's the American story I believe in. That's the story that got me into politics in the first place. And that's exactly the story Trump is trying to kill, because he knows that if that story survives, if Mamdani wins despite everything Trump has thrown at him, it proves that Trump's power isn't absolute. It proves that American democracy can still work. It proves that people matter more than presidents. And Trump can't let that happen. So he's not just trying to defeat Mamdani. He's trying to make an example of him. He's trying to send a message to every other potential Mamdani out there. Don't even think about it. Look what I'll do to you if you try.